Hey everybody, this is the educational series on infrared saunas. This is video part 5. I may have forgotten, maybe 6, I don't know, but anyway, so this one is on off-gassing, and it's also on wood types, because the two things are related. So remember that most saunas, even when in doubt, when you're not sure, 90-something% of the time comes from big factories in China, and all of them do almost identical streamlined manufacturing processes. Remember that they have to. They're trying to crank out thousands and thousands and thousands of saunas per month. So one of the best ways to streamline that process is with a cheaper construction and the actual assembly. So you're not really using nails. If you are, it's very few. And you're also not using any screws, of course. It's mostly going to be adhesives, wood, adhesive glues, that are going to basically be holding all that together. And keep in mind that most saunas are just wood, so adhesives and glues work very well to bind different things together. They work good from a financial perspective and from a time to crank these things out, but from a therapeutic perspective, it's definitely a no-no. And it creates what we call off-gassing. So consumers started to do well as they started to get educated in the last 10 years. They did a good job trying to hold these companies to be a little bit more accountable to reducing the EMF levels, at least on where the emitters are. As I talked about in another video, we still see spikes of EMF in different aspects of the sauna, different walls and areas, because of industrial specifications of repurposing parts that are in infrared saunas that really belong to other industries, not around people, and aren't really human safe in my opinion. But so off-gassing, what's that term really mean? Okay, you ever buy a product? It doesn't have to be from China. It happens more often. But you ever buy a product and you just open up the packaging and it's like, what does that smell? And this smells like chemically, right? And sometimes it's so bad that you open it up, leave it in your house, and before you know it, the whole room smells. And you come back in the room and then you really notice and you're like, oh my god, what does this smell? That's all off-gassing. It's just all the different types of VOCs is one term, VOC, you can Google that, and all the different types of basically chemical bonds or chemicals that are breaking down in the environment, in the air because of oxygen, or because of moisture, or because of heat. Okay, or the mix of all of them. And so in general, there's a lot of chemical treatments and compounds that are going into wood for a lot of the industrial applications of wood that are not really good for the types of applications that are going in an infrared sauna. So one of the big risks with a lot of brands is that they're doing a lot of different practices and they're having different types of standards, like with woods, that are standards for other industrial applications. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Some of the really cheap saunas we see out there will be using woods like hemlock, and as just one. There's many other examples as well. But and hemlock necessarily is not completely a bad thing, just if you see hemlock. But I will say this, that 90% of the hemlock that's produced is produced by big wood plants, manufacturing processing plants, timber plants, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so and 90% of that is going to be going to different industries like furniture, and that furniture also includes like in-house kitchens, things like that. And of course, for those types of applications, treating the wood can be a very important thing for those purposes. For example, if you're in your kitchen, you don't want to spill a little water down the sides of your kitchen cabinets, and the next day, you have all sorts of like water damage and water stains and all that kind of stuff. You'd say, what did I buy this wood for? Now granted, in older homes, that are using untreated, more raw wood, you have to be very careful with how you're cleaning that. I don't know if you're watching, you have older furniture, antique furniture, you just don't clean this furniture with, some of the new cleaning products out there you just pull off the shelf, and you have to be very careful. So again, that's why they treat, in modern times, more modern times, different types of woods for different applications. Now, in general, 90% of this wood does not belong inside of a sauna that is being heated and cooled and heated and cooled and heated and cooled many times, and also has infrared that's saturating this wood. Now keep in mind that it's not just heat, like in a traditional sauna, you have a heater in there and it's getting really hot, okay? But the infrared also actually penetrates into the wood. So infrared actually has the property of traveling through a little bit through some types of elements, just like your body, okay? So it's actually traveling in a little bit into the wood and really, really warming up that wood. And that infrared also has a great ability for breaking down chemical bonds. So it's a fantastic way, basically, unfortunately, for all this different crap basically in the wood, including then the adhesives, which are right behind the wood, or actually in front of the wood. Now, a really sketchy thing that a lot of companies do, most of them are mass manufacturing, okay, big manufacturers, is those emitters on the side walls that you see. And this is crazy, but I mean, you can have a look for yourself. Look inside the sauna next time if you ever get up close in person or in pictures, and look to see if it actually has any nails that have actually put that emitter on the wall or screws. And usually what you'll see is that there's none. So how are they getting that on the wall, right? Right where all the the concentrated infrared source is, right? They're gluing it. They're gluing it. Not only a lot of times are they gluing fabric on top of the emitter, but they're gluing the whole emitter to the wall as well. So this is not glue and adhesives that are behind panels of wood and clearly out of the reach of infrared. I mean, certainly, saunas are usually several layers because they have to put insulation between. And granted, one of those layers, that are more towards the outer portion of the sauna are not really going to be getting that broken down per se, or that warmed up, right? And that's understandable. That's not really going to off-gas much more. What we're really concerned about is the inner portions where the glue is either on the, being exposed directly to the infrared or just a little bit underneath in that next layer. And then also the wood itself has been treated for other industrial applications. So when you're doing your research, and again, I've done this research, but there's only a few companies, a very, very few, that aren't just importing their wood from Canada. Like, oh, we're just, you see this all the time, like all Canadian wood, they don't treat. Certainly Canada doesn't sell to the furniture industry. No, that couldn't possibly happen. It's ridiculous. Canada, produces all kinds of different wood and treats it for a variety of different purposes. And so, very much so, there's some brands that import from Canada, but they're getting their wood from specific lumber processors that are not processing it in the same ways for the specific purposes of putting on your deck, for example. Okay? Now, so that's kind of something you really got to look at. And you really very rarely on a company's website see them mention anything like that, because almost hardly any of them are actually getting and importing different wood that has not been processed for different applications. So this is again just one of those purchase criteria, that if you see a company that's using different wood that is way more expensive, and I'm trying to think of it was on 60 Minutes. What was it was on lumber, what was it called? If you just Google 60 Minutes, 60 Minutes lumber scam, try Googling that. That's a fantastic article, and I'll try to put it on my site here under the video, that basically goes over a lot of what I'm saying about importing this wood to California and putting all these. California has some high standards on different types of things environmental related to woods, and they put on a fake label basically overseas to basically appear that they were adhering to California standards. So man, this can get complicated, because you could have a sauna company, even with good intentions, getting a wood that was falsely labeled. Anyways, but that doesn't happen too often. I'll just to ease your mind a little bit. But again, it's no coincidence that the companies that are importing better quality wood also are willing to make a different kind of sauna that's not mass manufactured, that has better component quality grade, specifically customized for saunas, for the sauna industry, for humans, and the whole thing, right? Usually that goes hand in hand with the company that cares, and that also is not money first, then helping people next, maybe, versus the normal industry standard in the saunas that just make up as much profit as you can first. Don't worry about, just do as much, specifications and component quality and all that kind of stuff as the consumers expect. So the point of a lot of these videos and my role is to try to educate people so they expect more and ask for more, and that'll slowly trickle down, or trickle up in a way, to get back to manufacturing and companies hopefully at some point in the future, and consumers will demand better quality and they'll know about more of these risks essentially. So if you have any more questions about wood types, wood grades, you want to know which brands basically use better construction, they use more nails and screws, they're not mass manufactured, all these different types of things related to wood. And I actually want to add in one quick thing here. A very common, I would call a scam, maybe game that the companies play. If you look on their websites, they try to talk up their wood, like, we only use this because it's hypoallergenic and these other ones are irritating to you. Don't buy this other wood type. And they're basically trying to put down their competitors that use different wood types. They're actually getting those allergenic standards from a wood industry report, which, if you actually look at the report and that standard that comes out every year, it's really based off more of the risk exposure for different types of professions, usually construction industry, lumber processing, where there's a lot of dust in the air from a specific type of wood being processed or used. And that dust is airborne, of course, and gets inside the lungs, and that's a very different effect. So it's kind of ridiculous when you go on a sauna company's website and they're saying, don't buy this wood, our wood is way more, hyperallergenic. That's true from the standpoint if you are in there sanding your walls and creating a lot of dust, or sawing constantly your benches. It's ridiculous. If it's not really airborne, it kind of voids that whole wood industry report that are kind of analyzing the different wood types based off of the inflammatory or allergenic type of response people could potentially have. What these companies don't talk about, what really matters, is how their woods are being treated. And not only being treated for different industry applications again, but if they're also using a lot of adhesives and glues, and what types of things are going into the construction. Is there particle board in between the wood? So just because they have veneers of cedar or whatever, some companies on the inside with the insulation will have particle board, which is just terrible. It's just chemicals holding wood chips together, basically. Or maybe they're using some other type of really cheap wood inside there that's heavily treated, and it's just extremely cheap to put as a middle layer. So those are just some points to think about, and that's another criteria that I've used to analyze different companies and what is most therapeutic, has the least amount of consequences, and then tying that all together with price point. So if you have any questions about that, or a different sauna that you're looking at, or a brand, or you just need some recommendations, I can help you with that process. Just as usual, fill out the inquiry form below or go to the Contact Me page. Thanks.